Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. We're going to go ahead and continue installing this black dash in this 99 F-350 over here. We currently have the wiring harness out of the original dash, and it's kind of just laying here in the new dash. So I have to go ahead and fit this up into this dash. There will be no modifications needed to put this in, but you do see that we have some extra insulation here. So this is something that's been added to the 05 and up trucks, and something that I would like to make note of. I did say in a previous video that you couldn't get a black dash in a 2004. Now, they made a 2004 Harley truck. I did forget about that one. So you could get a dark dash for a 99-04 truck, but it had to be a Harley truck. It had to be a 2004. So you're still going to run through the wiring changes that you would need to do in an older truck, but you can get a black dash in a 99-04, but only in a 2004 Harley. So that makes it a very specific year to get a dash. So it's a lot easier to find an 05 to 07 Harley truck, so we went with that era of dash. However, we are going to be using the upfitter switches, and hopefully reusing some of the other stuff that came with the 05 to 07 dash. So we're going to go ahead and get the 99 harness put into the 05 dash, and everything here should bolt up. Doesn't look like there's going to be any needed modifications. The structure of the dash is pretty much the same as the 99 dash, which is behind me here that you can't see. So we're going to go ahead and get this all clipped in here and hopefully get everything bolted in. And then we'll also get the airbag changed out, and I'll show you how to do that as well, because we're going to use the 99 airbag structure, but we're going to be using the newer style face to make sure we have the correct color, and we also want to make sure that we have consistent compatibility. We don't want to have an airbag that's not going to work. So we have this loosely set here. Your wiring will mimic your original routing. So the speedometer wires will just kind of go up under here, and as you get everything set in, you can go around to the face and pull them through. You want to make sure that you pull up all this white insulation, because this flat piece here will actually go underneath this ductwork. So it'll you don't have to actually take it off, but you want to make sure that you get it up underneath there. So we'll start on this side over here, getting this all secured, and make sure that we don't pinch any wires. So the main harness clips in just like the old dash did. The gem module here will bolt into the same holes, so there's no issues with that. This hangs out here because it goes to the firewall. This is your steering column wiring, so that will all just go down in here. Okay, so we have our throttle pedal, OBD2, and then you have this plug here. There was nothing plugged into this on his truck. All right. These will actually clip to the frame here, and then you have your ground. So there's already a ground bolt here, so we can go ahead and install the ground in the factory location. So we'll move our throttle pedals back over. All of this wiring will run up to the HVAC area here. And then we also have the four-wheel drive selector switch, so that'll run up here as well, up into the dash. So we'll just push it in there to where we can get to it. This is our trailer brake controller here. And then we have our wiring here. I'm not really sure what the relay is for here. However, there is a place for it on the dash. If you are going to be using the auxiliary switches, you have this harness here. So we're leaving this here. However, it's kind of in the way for the relay mounting. So I'm going to go ahead and pop that harness off. Now I may end up rerouting this harness a little bit later, but I'm not going to worry about that till we get the dash back in, because realistically this stuff needs to have a place to go first. This is your radio harness, so that'll run up here. Along with your HVAC wiring, which will also run up to that area. And then this here is your power point connector. This also, power point and everything else, it also runs up here. This module, it'll hang out down here. And then over here we have our extra wiring that runs down into your kick panel. And then we need to install our jumper plug. This is the jumper plug that was installed on the other dash. And then also your under hood light, or your glove box light, that will also run up here, and we'll put that in whenever we get the light set. So the only difference that we're going to have with this dash is we have a vacuum bank here, so we have a little bit of a different change here for wiring. Routing, however, this should not make any hindrance for the wiring we have here. There should be a hole in this tube here for this wiring harness. However, it's not going to cause any issues being the way that it is. So not too worried about mounting this anywhere just yet. This is something that I can get to through the dash if I need to mount this somewhere. But we are done with this for now. This is technically wiring installed. I'm going to go ahead and put this in here shortly, and then this will clip onto here like it should have in the factory. And we have some extra plugs here, so this will be your throttle pedal assembly, and you have your extra wires here that are factory. And then I need to pull some clips off the other dash to mount these plugs. So that's pretty much wiring installed in this dash. Now we're going to be making some changes to this. We have to modify some plugs here, because since we're changing our headlight switch to the newer style, so we got to change the plugs there. But this is pretty much wiring installed into this dash. The only thing we're going to have to do is actually install the antenna wire, and that'll be a little bit more difficult with this foam in place here, but it shouldn't be too difficult. It actually has a factory routing position for it, so we'll just run it up and back behind here like it was from the factory. So it was hidden in amongst all this, so we'll get it put back in the factory position. But wiring is installed here, so we're going to go ahead and get this OBD2 plug put in and make sure that everything's tidied up in here before we go ahead and flip this thing over and start doing any wiring changes. It's going to be a lot easier to change any wiring differences with the dash out on the table here and than it is to, say, try to do it a little bit later. So your OBD2 plug here, Ford's done this for many, many years. You can set it up so that it's straight down, or you can actually run it so that it's sticking straight out like this. The way that these dashes are set up, they have to be straight down, because if you run them forward, so that'd be the forward of the dash there, you run into a problem with your actual dash trim. So these need to be facing down. Okay, so this is pretty much all of our wiring installed here. Not going to do anything with the column wiring or anything like that until we get the column put back in and you can line it back up to everywhere it needs to be clipped in. So we get our dash flipped around here, and our speedometer wiring and everything needs to come through. Make sure that you route these up over this tube, because if you go underneath, you'll be trying to fight this tube the whole time. So these should be above this tube here. And then I also have to install our light here for the glove box. And you can see that we don't have the airbag in, all right? See these little clips here? So these little clips will come out. They're kind of a pain, but it's a lot easier to pull them through than it is to try to get them out. So we have our little clips here. So we have our two airbags here. You can see one's tan, one's black charcoal. Now, these airbags don't share the same part numbers. They aren't even the same style of airbag, not the same type. They look the same, but are visually different, okay? So you are able to change your front pad on these, which is great. So we have 4 nuts that hold this on. Pull this bar off, and you pull the airbag off. So there you have your pad. All right, so this pad obviously is tan, but we want to use the original airbag out of this truck because you don't want to be messing with changing airbag styles. So you don't want to be messing too much with that. So you always want to use your original airbag if possible. So we're going to go ahead, pull the pad off the black one there, and go ahead and get it swapped over. So you can see here, we've got the pad set up. We'll go ahead and set it under here. And we'll go ahead and put our nuts back on this plate here. And now you have your original style airbag with your new style pad. So, you know, you're able to use the older airbag with your newer dash pad in the front to change your color. And then I had brought up about those clips. Now these clips go on the airbag tabs here. Just slide them on, and then whenever you go to put it back in, it'll clip in. And just like that. So we're not going to put this in until we put the truck back together, because this thing's heavy, so that'll make this dash much, much lighter, and we won't have to worry about doing that right now. So we got the dash flipped around, and we started, making sure that all the wiring was where it needed to be. Just basically just rerouting everything so that it came out where it's supposed to. You know, our radio and HVAC will come out the top here. We have our power point, and if you have the airbag light, it would be over here. We went ahead and put our glove box light in and plugged it in back here. But nothing else to clip in. You know, we made sure that everything was where it was going to be. We have to change our headlight plugs. So I'm going to move this dash over a little bit to get you a better view here. And we're also going to bolt the gem module fuel box assembly in as well. So the new headlight switch that comes with the new bezel here is different than the old one. You know, these have a different shape. I've seen where guys will actually, you know, tear them apart in the back and change the face. However, you know, here's your factory 99 and up plugs. So here's your 05 and up plugs. You can see that they are very, very different here. So I'm going to go ahead and repin, or I can't repin these because the pins are different sizes here. So I'm going to go ahead and get a wiring schematic for this, and then go ahead and cut these plugs off, obviously leaving enough on here in case we have to reinstall these for some reason, and then install these ones on here. So that's going to take some time, but I'll go through and show you what we ended up running into here and make sure that we get you the information you need. Now, the only thing I'm going to say is your wiring colors could change depending on your model year. So, you know, if you're going to be doing this to your truck, you know, if you're going to be changing wiring plugs like we are here, you want to make sure that you have a diagram for your year truck and the year truck that you received your donor from. So make sure that you have that information before starting this install. So I can go ahead and give you the wiring diagram colors for the 99 and then this 05 that we're using. So I can give you that information. However, you know, it may change via whichever truck you're using. Something I want to point out here, since we are using a newer style dash here, the older style gem module fuse box assembly has 2 bolts at the top and a nut at the bottom. You saw us take it out earlier. If you have the newer style truck, you'll have these speed clips that will be clipped onto the steel frame of the dash. One goes where this bolt is currently, and then you'll have another one over here. You'll have to remove those so that you can install your top 2 bolts here, because otherwise the speed nut gets in the way. So you have to remove those, and that's all you have to do for modification wise to bolt this module and fuse box assembly in. So you saw in the previous video that we did not have any outside heater box here. So the heater box is installed now. We also have the dash wiring put all in completely. It's all wired and set up. So we have the outside heater box installed in this truck. We are also installing the factory trailer brake controller for an 05 to 07, and also the climate control for an 05 to 07 in this 99 truck. So there was a lot of extra wiring to be added, a lot of extra circuits to be added. We had to do a lot of additions to the dash harness. However, everything seems to be progressing correctly, so we won't know for sure until once everything's in and, you know, we plug it in, turn everything on. So we won't know for sure if everything's going to be working correctly. I mean, we pulled all this stuff out of a salvage unit, so we don't know if everything's going to work cohesively until we power it on and do literally a check of everything. So I'm going to go ahead and show you the heater box we put in, show you the back side of the harness that we put in here, show you the back side of the dash, and we are currently going to be putting in a new heater core into the heater box, and we're going to be using the 05, let's see, when did they change? 2003 to 2006. We're going to use the newer heater core. Now, why are we using the newer heater core? So 99 to 03, then 03 to 06, they're 2 different heater cores, 2 different part numbers. The difference between the 2 is the size of the tubes. You can kind of see them back here behind me. So the outlet ports and inlet port for the heater core are different diameters. So so we're going to use 05 here. The 05 has a larger heater core hose, and the 99 has a smaller one. So the 99 stuff is a little bit harder to find. However, since we're using the climate control for the 05, we are going to be using the newer style heater core, which allows us to use the correct style heater hose, which is also easier to get. So we're going to go ahead and do it that way. But this truck is going to probably have an engine swap at some point, so we're not hooking the AC up, we're not necessarily hooking the heater up. However, we can still do its testing and make sure everything works correctly, because I don't know how he's going to be doing the engine here later on, so this is going to be open-ended for him, but we are getting everything installed. So I'm going to go ahead and show you this heater box and show you the inside of the truck here, and hopefully we'll get the dash put in here as well. So we have the heater box installed here, and we have some other extra wiring that's been added. And then we also had to add some extra wiring over here, in addition to the wiring that we installed whenever we had the truck the last time. We also have to install a brake transducer sensor, so we'll be installing that as well, but I have to get some fittings to make sure that we can make that work. Otherwise, we're going to have to change the master cylinder. So we'll see how that works. And over here we have the two heater boxes. So this is the 99 box, and then over here is the 05 box. And you can see that the hoses are definitely a different size. So that's why we're going to go ahead and run the newer style, because that'll give us easier options for the hoses, and then also give us the stuff that we want for when we hook up the heater. Inside here, not a whole lot has changed other than mouse traps. So we ended up catching a mouse in this truck, actually two of them, so they're gone. We just made sure we had enough insurance in here. However, we added a wiring harness over here for the climate control, so that's something that we added in, and we'll do a plug and play with that as well. But next order of business is going to be getting the heater core put in the inside heater box here, get the heater box set up in here, get everything cleaned up, and then get the dash in. So you can see we got the dash put in here. We have installed the inside heater box prior to installing the dash. We hooked up our vacuum lines over here, our vacuum lines down here, and then we have our new plug that we installed previously that was shown earlier, and the blend door motor, and then the relays here. Now it looks a little bit untidy up here. However, I wanted to make sure these relays were accessible. There's not too many places to really put them, and they're easily accessed by dropping the glove box here in case you have a relay go bad. So we did that there. And we have our new airbag installed, and I haven't clipped it in yet because I wanted to clean around it. That's installed, and then we went ahead and got all of our bolts installed up here. So everything's installed here. All of our wiring is ran in the dash. We plugged the module in down here. All the plugs are where they should be for all of their respective pieces and parts here. I still have to pull the inside air temperature sensor out and do a little bit of cleaning in the grill here. It's a little bit scuzzy, so I've got to pull that out. But the dash is completely installed, and previously I'd mentioned that we ran with the 05 and up heater core, and I was correct that the outlets for the heater core are larger. So this is the 05 to 07 heater core, and these hoses are definitely much larger than the older style, so 99 to 04. I'm not sure where the brake is. I've seen where it's 2005. I've also seen where it's 2006. But make sure that you get the correct heater core for your truck, because they're visually the same except for these hoses. And then your 05 and 06 and 07 trucks use the shorter bracket here for the outside heater box instead of the longer one. This is another difference that we ran into. So I didn't actually have this bracket, so I was able to actually find one, which is great. And that bracket actually goes from here up to the firewall. Now I need to install that because, as you can see, this is a little bit flexible, which is not what you want. So I need to go ahead and install that, but I had to find one first because we didn't have one. On this side of the dash, we still have to change the headlight plugs, but all the wiring is ran for our cluster, our column, and everything like that. This harness here is for the upfitter switches. Now, there's no good place for this to actually go, so it's just kind of hanging out for now, and we're going to go ahead and figure out where we're going to put that after everything's installed. But that's about where it's supposed to be. And then you can see the plug down here with the blue masking tape on it. Those wires are going to be for the brake master cylinder if we are able to retrofit that in. But everything is installed on this side. You can see the dash is completely installed. The brake lever, the release lever here, bolts up in the factory location. Everything is bolted in the way it should be. You can see we got our plugs put in over here, and then the throttle is plugged in down there. So everything is routed the way that it needs to be routed inside this truck, which is great. But, so here's something we ran into. The grab handles. So this grab handle here, the actual handle is longer on the newer truck. So we had to drill 2 holes up here because the old holes are down farther. Now that poses the next problem. Your driver's side A-pillar also has a handle that goes from here to here. So we ended up drilling those holes too so that we could put a handle here, because if you don't, you have this unsightly gap where the handle is supposed to be. So we went ahead and drilled through the pinch weld, and we tapped those holes. It is thick enough to hold those bolts. It's not going to be, say, as perfect as the factory setup, which uses the welded square nuts, but these are definitely going to be strong enough to hold the grab handle. So that's something else that you have to do to your earlier truck to run the newer interior. So we're going to go ahead and keep moving forward on this here. We have to go ahead and get all this stuff back installed and get the column put in, and then we can go ahead and start retrofitting the headlight switch and retrofitting the steering wheel into the actual truck here. Once we get everything buttoned up and bolted in, we're going to do a systems check, make sure that everything works, and hopefully we don't run into any problems. As you can see, there's some more stuff in here now. We have the steering wheel installed and the horn works, so that's a plus. We have our lower dash installed here. We still have to do a little bit of work with the upfitter switches. They are not hooked up right now at all, so we're going to wire those in another day. He said that he's not too worried about this. We're just going to hook up the illumination for here. Trailer brake controller is installed. You know, everything here is installed. We have this plugged in. It's just hanging out here, and we're going to do a test here. One other thing we did do was wire up the headlight plug. Now this was a mess because the 05 and up system is totally different than the earlier system. Now, in doing this, the way I did it, because this wire here, your dark blue with the white, it is for your auto lamp system. And this truck doesn't have auto lamps. We do have the sun load sensor up top here, and we do have the wire for that. However, it's a whole nother circuit that needs to be added with relays and everything else. I don't think he wants to do that. If he wants to do that later, we can do that later. And then this wire here is for the fog lights, which this truck also does not have. However, everything else has been hooked up. The new harness has 3 parking light wires, whereas the old harness had 2. However, everything else is pretty explanatory. You have your 2 powers. One thing you're not going to have is you're not going to have an ignition source to this headlight switch. You're also not going to have output to your GEM module. Now, if you don't do the output to the GEM module, now power leaves the headlight switch originally and powers to the GEM module. I don't know what kind of power it receives. I did test it. It was 12 volts battery, but I don't know for sure what it's supposed to see. So I did not hook that up. There was no provision in this headlight switch, the new one, to install that in here. So we did not install the GEM module, in which scenario, when you turn your headlights on, your parking lights, and you have your key in the ignition, the dinger will not ding, because the gem module doesn't see that the parking lights are on. Could we install that into this system? Yes. I may do some more research on it later on. However, I always unhook the door dingers in the OBS trucks, so I'm not too concerned about lights dinging in this Super Duty. If he wants it, we'll go ahead, come back, and we'll investigate that further. However, let's do a little test here. So we have key. We'll turn the key on. You can see the trailer brake controller lights up. Does work. Does adjust. And then, oh, so we have climate control in here as well. You can't hear too much over the fuel pump right now. However, there we go, fuel pump shut off. Fan does work. We don't have a vacuum pump out there right now. However, you can hear the relay clicking for everything in the back there. We have outside temperature, and everything seems to be working here. I would call this a success. We're going to go ahead and finish buttoning this up. We have a lot more stuff to install as far as the dash bezel goes, and then also, we got to plug the headlight switch in, and we have to go ahead and get our vacuum pump installed under the hood, put all the inner fenders back in. It's a lot of screwing around, a lot of stuff that just needs put back that's tedious. However, we did check the steering wheel controls do work. We don't have, obviously, a radio, so we can't check the audio side of it. However, we do know the temperature side of it does work. And driving down the road, we haven't checked the cruise because obviously the truck has not left the garage. However, these should pose no issues. As long as the cruise worked before, it will work again. So we have a fully functioning 05 dash in here. We got a couple more things to do, and we're going to go ahead and get started on getting those covered. But we're going to button all this up in here first and foremost, so we don't have everything torn apart. So we've gotten everything buttoned up on the interior here. You can see we still needed to give it a little wipe down. We went ahead and got the headlight switch all put in, and we did a revision to that. We were talking about the wire for the gem module. It's a white, I think, and red. However, we didn't hook it up initially, and it wasn't giving us the lights on with the door open. So I did a little bit of research on it and found out that if you hook that into the parking lights, that's where it gets its signal. So now with the door open, the dinger does ding for the parking lights or headlights to be on with no key in the ignition, because as you can see, there's no dinging going on now. So the key is not in the ignition here. See, we don't have a radio here. We don't have the correct dash adapter. And I don't know if he's going to want to change the radio at all. So we just left that out. However, we went ahead and got everything installed here. And everything lights up like it should. And these are not hooked up currently. This will be a later project. However, we did do a torque converter lockup switch in this truck. It was previously in, and it will light up whenever the off light lights up on the parking sensors there, since this truck doesn't have the parking sensors. Now, we're going to change that up another time. Hopefully later on, we can rewire that torque converter lockup switch, because it's kind of funky at the moment. But we wanted to not drill any holes anywhere for stuff that may be changed or added or subtracted at a later date. But we still have to put the caps on the top here. I got to dig through and find those. But we got everything installed here. The A-pillar is installed with the handle. It's good and sturdy, which is great. And we are pretty much done wiring on the inside of this truck. So everything currently works that was supposed to work. We did run into a problem where the high beam indicator and the turn signals weren't working on the dash cluster. Turned out to be that it was just a bad connection on the actual bulbs in the back, probably since the truck has been sitting for so long. So that was an easy remedy. However, it took forever to find. But we're going to go ahead and show you what's different with the brakes now, because we are trying to hook up this brake controller, and it does work. However, I want to make sure that we get the best possible reading for that brake controller. We've gone ahead, removed the master cylinder here, and we have added our new plug for our brake transducer valve. And this runs into the inside of the truck, and it's all loomed up and ran with the factory wiring. So we installed this. This runs to the trailer brake controller, and what this does is it gives the trailer brake controller input feed from the master cylinder. So this is your cruise control deactivation switch. It is obviously it's unplugged. However, I had unplugged it because it didn't have the recall done to it. So we're going to add the recall into this, but there's no way for this plug, which is a 3-pin, to work with this plug, which is a 2-pin. They are two totally different systems. And the best thing about this is neither of them have the same pitch thread. We have our old master cylinder sitting here. This master cylinder is 1 3/8 inches in size, so that is your diameter of the bore inside. This is the cruise control deactivation switch, and this is the brake transducer switch. And you can see there's 3 pins in there. A little hard to see, but there's 3 pins in here. Now this has no place to go in this. The thread pitch for this sensor is, I do believe, 3/8 by 16. I can't remember. It's small though. It's a very coarse. It's a standard thread. This is a metric 12, and it is a bubble flare. Now this, they don't make adapters to go from this to that. I looked all over the place, and without doing about 15 different pieces of fittings, will you be able to make that work? So we went ahead and did a little bit of research, and we were able to find a new master cylinder. Now this is for an 05 to 07 truck, and you can see it's got a bigger reservoir on it. This is actually 1.5 inches, so it's a little bit bigger, which is great since we did the axle swap on this truck. And then if you notice here, it's a little hard to see, but you notice the inside of the bosses on the master cylinder are different. So your old one on the bottom here is inverted flare. Your top one is metric bubble flare. So I had to overcome that issue. And if you also notice, the master cylinders are facing the opposite way. So the brake lines actually come out on the opposite side of the master cylinder. So instead of them coming out on the passenger side, like a standard truck would be at this era, they went to the driver's side. So we had to make all new lines to fit this new master cylinder. Now, the issue comes into, we have standard lines on a standard truck, but we have metric lines up here. Went ahead, got new line, the correct size, which we used 3/16 because that's what was factory, and that's what I do believe the newer trucks use as well. Now this is an early 99, so it's a little bit different than say a 99 to 04, late 99 to 04. However, we made new lines that go from the bubble flare here that will go to the inverted flare on the rest of the truck. So if you watch the axle swap videos, there is a T down there for the front, and we have our rear ABS here. So both of those are standard fittings, and we have lines made up. So we have our lines made up here. So we have an inverted flare on this side. We have a bubble flare on this side. So we have, this is our front line. We went ahead and put the coil in it here because this one does go down to the frame to allow for some body movement. So that's one of them. We have the rear one made as well. But then we go ahead and say, okay, well, what about these sensors? They go in the bottom here. Now, I didn't unplug them yet. However, the green plug here is for your brake transducer, and the yellow plug here is for this sensor here, your cruise control deactivation switch. That sensor will thread directly into this master cylinder, and then you put the brake transducer here, plug your lines in, plug your wires in, and then you run your brake lines and bleed as necessary. So we're going to go ahead and get this all fit up and get it all bled out, and then hopefully put everything back together, and that will complete this 05 to 07 dash swap in this truck with all of the fun bells and whistles that came with those trucks. We've got our brake system all installed here. New master cylinder with our new lines that run from the master cylinder down over here. So this is an early 99, so it's got the rear ABS. We've got our inner fenders put back in. And then when you're doing this swap here, this wire here, runs up to your master cylinder. It is your low fluid sensor. So it is on the passenger side with this master cylinder instead of the driver's side. So we had to extend those wires a couple inches, which wasn't too bad. So we did that. I don't know if you can flip this master cylinder around to get the sensor on the other side or not. However, it's no big deal. So it was easier to extend the wires than trying to mess with the seals on the bottom here and possibly risk breaking the new reservoir there. We still don't have the plug plugged in down here for our cruise. However, we do have the sensor down here installed for the brake transducer valve, and that's this guy right here. It's a little bit hard to see, but that is for the brake transducer. So that is installed, wired in correctly, and runs right to the brake controller. Also under here, we have our vacuum pump installed right here. We have our vacuum tank installed here. And the lines are a little bit funky here because I had to figure out how to make these all work, because the pump is a very small line, whereas these are much larger. They're a little bit more normal size. So ended up making some lines here. It's a little funky, but it works. And then this is for the heater hose shutoff solenoid. Now, we don't have any heater hoses on here, so I had actually stuck this vacuum line on this stud to plug it off so they don't have a vacuum leak. And that actually works really well, surprisingly. But everything under here is now working correctly, and we have all of our extra fuses and relay for the climate control, and all the extra wiring for it as well is all added in. Also over here, we added our two circuits. So we have one here for the climate control. We have this one here for the trailer brake controller. And then this is obviously the fuel pump that we did when we did the axle swap. So I went ahead and kind of labeled those, but those are all set up and ready to go. Now inside here, this is about as done as it's going to get for now. Like I said, we still don't have a radio for in this truck. However, all the dash is installed here. We got the A-pillars installed. We have the kick panels down here installed. Same on this side. The A-pillars are installed. Kick panel. We still got to do a little bit of cleaning here. He's going to have to figure out what he wants to do with this extra wire and gauges, because I know that most of them don't work. So I know that they're going to be either changed or removed. But either way, we did solve the ignition lights issue that we were having with that wire. So we did fix that, and we got everything to work in here. So we got all of our illumination to work, which is great, and everything dims. But everything seems to be working correctly, which is fantastic, however. But here we are. We got the early 99 truck here sitting with an 05 to 07 dash and all of its components here. Obviously, we don't have power pedals. We didn't have that setup put in here. And we don't have a power rear window in here. I don't know if he's going to put one in, and no parking sensors. He can buy a different blank for in here to change that. And then the buttons over here for the instrument cluster. Obviously, they're not going to work, but he could set those up as momentary buttons for something else, which is great. But you can do this interior swap on an earlier truck here. It is possible. I just did it here myself, and it takes a little bit of ingenuity and some knowledge, but it is something that is extremely doable and extremely possible. So I want to thank you guys for watching these videos. And hopefully you guys can maybe take something away from these videos, do something a little bit different for your own self or your own truck. And, it's all in what you want to do, trying to be different. So we got the truck outside here. This will be the first time we've started it. So everything seems to be working correctly, which is great. We have our turn signal here, high beam on and off. The horn works here, And then we have our climate control down here, which we can make work. We got a fan control. We have our temperature here. We have exterior temp. We got our trailer brake controller here. Auxiliary switches aren't hooked up to nothing, but everything seems to be working correctly. We know the lights work, which is great. But there's the dash install. It's completely done. We got a little bit of the new stuff in here yet. We got a bunch of the old stuff to go back with it. However, this is 100% complete. We have the grab handles here on both sides, and I'm pretty happy with the outcome. So thanks for watching, guys, and hope you enjoyed the video. Catch you on the next one.